And again, so my name is Ankur Patel, Director of Advancement for Hindu University of America. And today's special webinar is on the yoga of global transformation. Dr. Sailesh Rao taught one course on the Dharma of sustainability this last quarter at HUA. I got to see some of the amazing things that were covered, but it's my pleasure to give him a proper introduction on this important webinar on the yoga of global transformation that we're going to get underway right now. So Dr. Sailesh Rao is the founder and executive director of Climate Healers, a nonprofit dedicated towards healing the Earth's climate, a systems specialist with a PhD in electrical engineering from Stanford University in 1986. Sailesh ji worked on the internet communications infrastructure for 20 years as part of his work and after his graduation. In 2006, he switched careers and became deeply immersed full-time in the spiritual and environmental crises affecting humanity. He's the author of the 2011 book, Karma and Dharma, The Occupation of Butterflies. And this is such an important issue for us to really dig into, and Hindu University of America is proud to have Dr. Sailesh ji working with us and offering courses on these topics and subjects. So Dr. Rao, let me hand it off to you and we can get started. I guess you have a presentation, and of course, we're going to be interactive and take people's questions. But Sailesh ji, let's get underway with you leading the way.
Thank you so much. Namaste, Ankurji. Namaste, everyone. I have a short presentation, and after which we'll basically make it interactive. As Ankurji said, I am a systems engineer by profession. And I started looking at the global transformation and the issue of sustainability from a very systems perspective. And so this presentation is about the yoga of global transformation. Yoga is normally applied on an individual basis. How do you reconnect back to your true self? But this needs to happen now at a species level and as a societal level, at a societal level. So that's why I call it the yoga of global transformation. Now, a global transformation is inevitable. It is going to happen, whether we like it or not. Okay, so you can see here in the picture, people playing golf with a huge fire going on behind them. That's the kind of scenarios that are becoming normal. There was a paper in January of 2021, just a couple of months ago, with some very reputed authors, scientific authors, who are talking about underestimating the challenges of avoiding a ghastly future. They're basically painting a very bleak picture for humanity. And a couple of years ago, in 2019, there was a paper on the pervasive human-driven decline of life on Earth points to the need for transformative change. So it's pretty much established in the scientific community that there will be a transformative change. And it's happening because of the way we are living on this planet. A few years ago, Gus Speth, who was the founder of the Natural Resources Defense Council, was being interviewed, and he said this. He said, I used to think that the top environmental problems were biodiversity loss, ecosystems collapse, and climate change. And I thought that with 30 years of good science, we could address those problems. But I was wrong. The top environmental problems are selfishness, greed, and apathy. And to deal with those, we need a spiritual and cultural transformation. And we scientists don't know how to do that. Now, he's a scientist, and I consider myself an engineer. And engineers actually look for solutions. We are trained to do that. So I started looking at, okay, why is there so much selfishness? Why is there so much greed? And why is there so much apathy? And I discovered that it's actually foundational to the way we organize ourselves. And indeed, we can organize ourselves differently so that selflessness and generosity and activism are normal. Wouldn't that be wonderful if we could organize ourselves like that? Okay, so that's what I set out to do. How would we create a system or a new way of organizing ourselves in which selflessness, generosity, and activism are normal? Now, the reason we haven't yet done that was because in 1992, in the Rio Summit, after the UN identified those three major environmental problems, President George H.W. Bush made a speech in which he basically said, the American way of life is non-negotiable. Okay, and pretty much ended any thought of transformative change at that point. But he also said, think of every challenge we face, and the solution to each is education. He wanted to be the education president, right? Yeah, so in this case also, it is the same situation. Yes, the solution to this is also education. And when you then analyze, what did he really mean by that? What is this American way of life that is non-negotiable? So I looked at the culture, which from an engineering perspective is the specifications of the American way of life. So what do the specifications say? They say that all men are created equal, which we have slowly expanded to mean all men and women and children. And I really would like it to be all beings are created equal. Okay, there's nothing I can argue about that. That is fine. All beings are created equal. And we all have an inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. There's nothing to argue about that. That's perfectly fine. But if you look at the implementation of the specification, which is really the civilization, civilization is an implementation of the culture. In the civilization, the American civilization, we have created one of the most unequal societies in human history, far from being all men created equal. From an inalienable right to life, we now have the colonialism of earning a living. When you say you all have to go earn a living, you're basically saying you don't have a right to life unless you do what I tell you to do. Someone with money tells you to do. From liberty, it has become the racism of institutionalized slavery. The prisons are being used as a way to create slave labor. And from the pursuit of happiness, we now have a civilization in which half of Americans are on antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications or illegal drugs on a regular basis. Now, what was Dr. Martin Luther King's dream? His dream was that we would actually implement what we said we were going to do. But what we have implemented is something it's almost the exact opposite of what we set out to do. Now, in engineering, we know that when our implementation does not match our specification, that there is something fundamentally wrong in our model. Okay? And so that's what I set out to find out. And I discovered that there are two axioms. Axioms are, beliefs that we just take for granted. That we take this for granted. This must be the truth, right? But these axioms are actually false. The first false axiom is a false axiom of consumerism, which says that the pursuit of happiness is best accomplished by stoking and satisfying a never-ending series of latent desires, which is what I call the greed is good rule. And we have in our Ramayana, Ravana with 10 heads, and every time a head is cut off, a new head is born. So he represents our desires. So our ancestors taught us, 7,000 years ago, that this is not true. And yet we are living in a civilization in which this is axiomatic. So this is the first false axiom of our civilization, of the global industrial civilization. The second false axiom is the false axiom of supremacism. So this says that life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage may possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantaged for their pursuit of happiness. This is what I call the might is right rule. And I don't know of any religion that says that this is true. Okay? Yet, this is foundational to our civilization. So fundamentally, we have created a civilization in which we have basically organized around our degrading tendencies. So it's a Kaurava civilization. It's a Rakshasa civilization. Because you see, Bhagavad Gita is about our dual tendencies. We have uplifting tendencies and we have degrading tendencies. And what Sri Krishna was telling Arjuna was to fight on behalf of our uplifting tendencies. Fight on behalf of the Pandavas. Yet we have created a civilization that is organized around our degrading tendencies. And this is why we are doing the exact opposite of what we set out to do. So how do you overturn these false axioms? And it has been happening. Okay, this is not something new. It has been happening. The false axioms of Western civilization, you start off with the first one, which is that we started off by thinking that the sun goes around the earth. And Copernicus and Galileo fought against this. And Galileo even got thrown in jail and got persecuted for saying this. But without overturning this axiom, there would be no scientific revolution. The second, which has to do with the false axiom of supremacism, is that black and brown people were put on earth for white people to enslave. And we overturned that in the Civil War of 19th century and civil rights movement of the 20th century onward. But it's still ongoing because it's built in. There is this, the false axiom of supremacism is built in. So when we practice human supremacism, when we say that we are superior to animals, we are automatically practicing supremacism against black and brown people. So we are buying into this idea. The third one was women were put on earth for men to possess. That also, we know it's not true. We've been trying to overturn it. And it started off with the feminist movement of the 20th century onward, and it's still ongoing because women are still oppressed. Then the fourth one, the happiness can be attained by fulfilling a never-ending series of latent desires. This again is ongoing, and this is the spiritual movement of 19th century onward that Swami Vivekananda and others after him have been spearheading. So this is ongoing. And finally, the last one, animals and nature were put on earth for humans to exploit, possess and exploit. This again is an ongoing revolution. The vegan movement is fighting this, or the vegan movement of the 20th century onward. So now we are facing a situation where these axioms have to be overturned very, very quickly. Otherwise, we are going to be in big trouble. So Arnold Toynbee said that. He said, it's already becoming clear that a chapter which had a Western beginning will have to have an Indian ending if it is not to end in self-destruction of the human race. So at this supremely dangerous moment in human history, the only way of salvation is the ancient Hindu way. Here we have the attitude and spirit that can make it possible for the human race to grow together into a single family. Actually, not just the human race. It's all life can grow together into a single family. That's the gift that we bring. That's the gift that Hindu University of America should be promoting. Okay? And I think that's what this course is about, that the course I'm teaching on the Yoga of Global Transformation. It's about creating a system and a way of organizing around our uplifting tendencies. How would the Pandavas organize themselves? What would be the axioms for that? And then how would we implement those axioms? How would we make decisions within that? So I see this as a way of, we have to create institutions, infrastructure, a constitution, and a currency around our uplifting tendencies. So that's what this course is going to be about. It's the Yoga of Global Transformation. And we are going to be looking into how do we accelerate this global transformation. It's going to happen. Okay, the transformation is going to happen. It's just how do you minimize the suffering? How do we accelerate this so that we make it happen as quickly as possible, rather than waiting for nature to beat us on the head, 100 times before we wake up. So thank you all very much. And I'll throw the floor open.
Yeah, so please put your questions in the Q&A box. And Sailesh, myself, I've gone down that path to becoming vegan and seeing how it's so interconnected, how it's so embedded in all aspects of our society. One of the first questions we have is from Sarvajitji, but before I get into that question, I'd just like to say, America's white supremacy evolved out of Europe's Christian patriarchy. It's not the American civilization that we're critiquing, it's the whole binary of Western thought, right? And there's so many aspects to it. So Sarvajit's question kind of aims on that, but also how do you tie the inequalities that we're addressing and address it in context of the Hindu caste system and other inequities that have existed in other parts of the world? Right. How do we respond?
Yeah, literally, we are at a Galileo moment in human history. So when Galileo suggested that the earth does not, the sun does not go around the earth, but the earth goes around the sun, people argued and they fought him and they threw him in jail for saying that and all that, right? But after that, once they verified that his statements were correct, that Copernicus and Galileo and their work was correct, and then Newton was able to write equations and show that he was able to predict the motion of the planet. I mean, it became like common knowledge that this is the truth. So we are at a similar moment in human history where we have to say that whatever we have taught so far, whatever we have organized around so far, is false. And we have to build a new system in which it is based on the truth, because only the truth is sustainable. Lies are not. Okay? This is what we all talked about during the Dharma course. Okay? Because sustainability is really about morality. And so, yeah, we need to build a new system in which people from any caste would come and say, I want to join that because I know I'm going to be treated fairly. Everyone would want to join this new way of organizing ourselves because it is fair to them. They see that it's fair to them. So I think that's why you need to create this new system with a new set of axioms.
I love that. Sustainability is about morality. That's such a powerful concept that it isn't really introduced out there, and I'm glad that you're bringing it up. Espandar from Florida is asking about the different ways that we're going to create either the institutions of currency on uplifting tendencies. They didn't catch all four of them. If you want to elaborate on what are the things that we can do to uplift our good tendencies as opposed to the other way around.
Right. Basically, we have to have the four things we need are infrastructure, institutions, constitution, and a currency. Currency is a way we conduct transactions among ourselves. Okay. It's a currency is like a currency of trust. This is the trust that we trust that with these transactions, they are in alignment with our morals and with our outlook on life.
They're so interconnected and they're so obfuscated. We don't know. I just watched Seaspiracy, just like we don't have any idea what's actually doing the damage to the planet until we investigate, we do all this research. And even then, people have their eyes closed, right? The ears closed, and speak no evil, hear no evil, see no evil. But is these four different aspects, what is the interplay, and how do you see, say, your last course? Maybe you could elaborate on what you did there, and then that transition into this next course that you're teaching.
Yeah, even though I did teach the last course on Dharma. The Dharma is what is the right thing to do. And yoga is how do you go about doing it? So it's much more about practical implementations. So Dharma, turns out that the Dharma is actually quite simple. What is the right thing to do? Well, be kind to all life. This is not complicated, right? I mean, as children, we were taught this. Be kind to all life in everything you do, and look deeper into the consequences of your actions and see that you are still being kind to all life. And when we do that in the current system, you become a minimalist. Because you know that everything you do does hurt life. Okay. Once you realize that, you say, well, this entire system is a mess, and therefore I'm going to be a minimalist. And but now it's okay. How do we create a new system, a new way of organizing ourselves that would allow us to move away from the valley of despair or the valley of minimalism to a plateau of sustainability and equality? Okay. So we have to now create an infinite game from the finite games that we have been playing. Because we if you think about it, in our civilization, we play a lot of competitive games in which there is eventually one winner. So that's the kind of game that at the macro level is leading us to be, human beings are the winners among all species. And among human beings, there's one guy who'll be the winner. Who knows? Maybe it's Jeff Bezos. Who knows, right? So, but it doesn't matter. If you have a game in which everybody loses except for one person, we all lost. And that's why we need to create an infinite game. And we need to be playing infinite games in the transformed civilization. Yeah.
Can we elaborate on that? What does that mean, gamifying it, right? The zero sum, the prisoner's dilemma, there's the evolution of cooperation, there's different kind of threads that really hone in on what you just said. If there's only one winner, all the rest of us are losers. That's not the kind of society we want to have.
Right.
But what are the games that we can articulate to address that and develop that?
Right. So we are, see, the second axiom, the axiom of supremacism, we begin by saying that life is a competitive game in which those who have gained an advantage can possess, enslave, and exploit animals, nature, and the disadvantage for the pursuit of happiness. That's the axiom we are working with right now. So the corresponding axiom for an infinite game situation would be that life is a collaborative game in which we each bring our unique gifts to give all we can, receive what we need, and become all we are. This is the vitality code of life, a life that thrives infinitely. Okay. So it's to me, life has both, but we have emphasized the competition so much. And then we have acquired power through our technology. And now we are killing all the animals off. And I said, excuse me, this is not why you were given all this power, right? We were given this power to do other things. And that's what we will be exploring. What should we be doing with the power that we have acquired? Should we be killing all the animals off? I'm saying, no, that's silly. And that, we were given this power so that we can do something better with it, right? So we have to say that's our gift we bring, and we are going to help the ecosystem with that gift. It's, to me, it's like in the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says that you have a right to action, but not to the fruits thereof. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful. Dropping so many nuggets of wisdom and knowledge. Don't worry, this webinar is recorded and we'll send it to you afterwards. Manohar Shindeji is stalwart in the Los Angeles community who's been working in so many different ways for Hindu Dharma, DCF, and HUA. Manoharji asks, any critique or comment on Vandana Shiva's works on these issues? And I actually read Monocultures of the Mind, and that was an interesting, it fits in beautifully with what you're talking about, how we're so narrow in our perspective when the diversity is really what makes us powerful. So your thoughts on that?
No, Vandana Shiva has been doing amazing work, basically bringing back the knowledge about our the biodiversity that needs to happen, and that we need to be nurturing biodiversity as opposed to the monoculture idea is the idea of competition again. What is the best thing to grow? So nothing else grows, right? So, I mean, who made that choice as what is the best thing to grow? It's based on our short-term thinking. That's the best thing to grow. in the longer run, nature was perfectly fine as she was. So, so it's about bringing back the biodiversity, bringing back the native forests in a given region, probably creating a lot of food for us so that we have plenty to eat. Because we have created a system in which we value scarcity. So things are valued highly if they're scarce. Then why are we shocked that the whole thing is becoming scarce? Right? Because that's what we are asking for. We're asking nature, give me scarcity, and she'll give it to you. Because it's a wishing tree, right? This is our wishing tree.
Scarcity, supply, demand, all of those concepts, and then the way that we have folks hoarding
Right.
and preventing to create value. Benoit Bordoliji asks, why do you call it yoga though, right? Yoga is such an expansive concept and idea. Maybe we can hone in on that and explain how that fits into this.
Yeah, I call it yoga because it's really the union. Yoga means connecting, yoking, connecting the two together, right? So it's the union of Homo sapiens as a species with the rest of the natural world. Because we have been separated in our minds. We feel separated from nature. We kind of distance ourselves. We stay in our homes and we sweep everything away, so that it's clean. Clean meaning there is no nature inside, right? And so we make sure that there are no insects inside. I mean, so we have this, we're trying to create a bubble for ourselves. And so yoga is about reconnecting back with nature, finding our own place in nature, and executing on that. So that's why I call it the yoga of global transformation.
Beautiful, beautiful. I dropped a link to the course and the time and the date in there, so in the chat. So if you want to look at the course in some detail right there. An anonymous person asks about scientific development. We cannot progress. What is the yogic way that we allow, say, the combination and progress using science, without science? How is that a part of this conversation?
Well, science is a way, it's a methodology for discovering the truth. And it's a great gift to humanity that the scientific revolution brought to us. And it's a systematic way of discovering the truth, especially in the material world and even in the inner world. I think Buddha was a great scientist, okay, because he was experimenting upon himself and discovering the truth. So there will be progress, obviously, because as humanity, we have this incredible capacity to explore. And so that's what makes us different from other species. We explore a lot, and we also form huge herds. So we have a herd of 7.8 billion, all believing in the idea of money. And, these are all stories, right? Money is a story that we told ourselves. Even the idea of India is a story. There is no India on planet Earth. It's something that we put together in our mind, saying this is India. So we have that ability through stories, to coordinate our actions and form very large groups that work together. That's what gives us the power over any other species, right? And so we need to use that power to enhance life on Earth. I mean, Dr. James Lovelock said, if as a result of human presence, the Earth degrades, we are going to die off. If the Earth improves as a result of human presence, we will flourish. So it's simple. It's not that complicated to figure out.
And this applies broadly, not just plant life or animal life, it's all life.
All life, yeah. Because we each, and when I say we each bring our unique gifts, I'm referring to every animal, every plant, every insect. Bring their unique gifts.
So please put your questions in the Q&A box, not in the chat. It gets a little hard to follow. So if you have questions for Sailesh, just put them in the Q&A box. We're going through them. John Palka asks, tells you, brilliant exposition. We appreciate that. I thought it was as well. The struggle for sustainability has been prominent for at least 50 years. The Earth Charter is one example. So is environmental economics that identify and assign costs to externalities.
Hmm.
How do we add effective energy to this movement?
Yeah, we're going to be talking about that during the course. In fact, we're going to be implementing something during the course. I'm planning a class project, which would be to create a currency system for the new civilization. And the idea there is fundamentally there is an engineering project underneath this, right? If you think about spaceship Earth, we have spaceship Earth and there are certain limits to spaceship Earth and we have exceeded those limits. And you ask, so how would you live in a way that brings us within the limits? That is an engineering question. And yet, I don't see a single engineer working on it, so far. I mean, I see a whole bunch of economists and lawyers and politicians and, I mean, they're making decisions on spaceship Earth. If we had economists and lawyers and politicians designing the Mars rover, I assure you it will not get off the ground. Because there is a strong engineering component to what we need to do, and it's not being addressed. And so that's what I'm saying. That's what we will be working on during the course. That engineering aspect of it should be not just, not peripheral. It should be front and center. And then there is decision to be made. There are other things to be. There is a place for lawyers and politicians, economists, and all those, but that will be after the engineering has been systematically implemented correctly, right?
Yeah, the solutions have to be front and center. Like, what are we talking about if we're not putting the solutions front and center? In our first webinar that we had last quarter, the issue of population always comes up. Somebody's asking about that again. What do we do about the damage our potentially unsustainable population growth has been doing to the planet, and what's the balance there?
Right. So because those two foundational axioms are false, with those false foundational axioms, we have created a civilization that is fundamentally an ecological Ponzi scheme. And Ponzi schemes only work when they're growing. They have to keep growing. Otherwise, they stop. And if they stop, the whole thing collapses. We know that. Okay. Not only does it collapse, then everybody who is at the head of the Ponzi scheme, who concocted it, they all get thrown in jail. It's happened time and again, right? So they are all scared. So this is why they keep growing. And if they want to grow their Ponzi scheme, they have to grow the population, because the population is at the base of the Ponzi scheme, the ecological Ponzi scheme, the human population, because they have to extract from nature to grow the economy. And so when we create this new way of organizing ourselves, you won't have that pressure to increase the population all the time. In fact, I think the population will start declining and we see that in societies where equality is implemented, that the population automatically starts declining.
Right. Great. Fabio, you kind of touched on this already. Maybe just elaborate. How to bring yoga as a proper tool for the global transformation, considering the forces that are ruling nowadays, right? Greed, selfishness, and apathy.
Right.
I mean, part of how you fight apathy is getting enrolled in this course, getting involved in organizations like Climate Healers, or becoming vegan yourself, or taking those initial actions. But as you're saying, we need the institutions, we need the organizations, we need the currency, we need all of these things. If you want to elaborate.
Yeah, it is, it's basically, we are a herd animal, okay? Human beings are a herd animal. And in any herd animal species, there are the conservatives who stick to what they know, who have so-called apathy, okay? Because they don't want to change. And you have the explorers who go and try new things. And you need both, especially for species like ours. We need both. Because if everyone followed the explorers, whenever the explorers change something, then the species may go extinct, because the explorers may be doing something silly, stupid, it's dangerous. So you need that base of conservatives who stick to what they know. But when the explorers have pointed out that there is a better way of organizing ourselves, and they actually created the infrastructure and the institutions and the constitution and the currency for that new way of doing things, then everyone moves to that. And we've seen that also time and again. When the Declaration of Independence happened in the US, and everyone moved along and said, yeah, we want to be free from Britain. When the independence movement happened in India, we did the same thing. We said, okay, we want to be free from Britain. So we didn't stick to, saluting the king, the queen at that time, right? So same thing here. But we have a responsibility to create this new system, this new way of organizing ourselves. And I think, fundamentally, engineers have to do that. That's why I'm taking on this responsibility and teaching this course.
Can you elaborate a little bit on your own background, the network of different activists? It's not just HUA in this one course or you. There's so many different people who are working to make this global shift that we need to happen. And people are asking, kind of repeating in different ways, but it's not just us here. We're a part of this big transformative movement. Maybe you can talk about other organizations, other places that you've worked with, and the broader network that is developing.
Yeah, so there are people working on various aspects of this transformation. It's like a huge laboratory around the world where people are working on different aspects of this. And what we are trying to do is coordinate the activities. It's not like we don't know how to do these things. We know how to do these things because others have worked on it, right? And that's why we are able to put this together. And so I am part of the Climate Healers organization. I founded that. And I also started something called the Vegan World 2026 project, which is, the idea is that you need to put a date. You need to put a date that is immediate, not 30 years from now or 40 years from now, because people will say, hey, there's plenty of time, so my children will do it, right? No, this has to happen very quickly. Why? Because the environment is telling us that. So this date wasn't arrived at, plucked out of thin air. It was arrived at because of science is telling us you better make this transformation within the next 5 years. Otherwise, you are in big, big trouble. Okay, that's what science is telling us. That's why I showed those two papers in the beginning. Okay? And so people are working on it, on different aspects of it. And we have a Vegan World 2026 Convergence that happens every 3 months, where people, we get together, we talk about how to help each other. Because I see everyone in the vegan movement, I tell everyone in the vegan movement, if your wildest dreams come true, I am happy. So therefore, my job is to make sure that your wildest dreams come true.
On the other side, we have this nightmare of war, right? It has destroyed and sets us back so regularly. It's not just because of monotheistic religion. It's not just because of certain ideologies. Is it human tendency? Where does war fit in? How do we overcome that? And how do we redirect those resources to better use? Right. And can we?
Right. I think the idea, the impetus for war and violence comes from the fact that we have organized around our degrading tendencies. So we have created a Rakshasa civilization, and then we are saying, oh, why are the Rakshasas fighting each other? What do you expect? Because they have fooled themselves into thinking that their happiness comes from hoarding, from external things, right? Now, but if we didn't have this, we wouldn't be building all the tools and technologies we need to become the thermostat species of the planet, the climate regulators of the planet, which I think is our true role as in the ecosystems of the world. And this is why I say everything did happen for the best. Okay? We did go through this phase in order to transform from the caterpillar to the butterfly. Because if you had a world full of Buddhas, they would be perfectly happy and they wouldn't care to go and explore and to figure out, how do you measure temperature? Who cares, right? He wouldn't care. So, but now we can measure temperature, we can measure pressure, we can measure all these things. And we know that if we don't do it right, the planet will go back to another ice age, which causes a lot of suffering to animals, to all beings. So we become responsible. So once we acknowledge that we have changed the climate of the planet, we have automatically assumed responsibility for maintaining it. So we become the thermostat species of the planet. We have that responsibility.
Right. So oftentimes people think of engineering as extractive. You're using energy, you're using materials, you're polluting just because of the word engineering. I think you're using engineering in a different kind of framework and concept.
Right.
Yeah, unless we right. If you
So
want
the
to.
way I see engineering is implementing things, implementing your solutions with integrity. Okay, if you don't do it with integrity, your solutions that you implement will not match what you said you were going to do. So when you see a laptop that works, there's an engineering team behind it that worked with integrity to make it work like that. Because if I pretended that, that this much current is enough and I don't want to worry about the battery size or whatnot, you will have a product that doesn't work, right? So to me, engineering is about integrity. It's about being in alignment with the truth and applying science for the purpose of creating solutions. And so that's what is needed today, applying science for the purpose of creating solutions with integrity.
Gani Ganpatiji is kind of asking about the Ponzi scheme kind of concept. And historically, Indian families had different reasons to be large, right? Child mortality. But I think you really touched on that equality, educated women across all intersections, religion, economics, geography, have fewer children. But maybe how has it changed over time, and what is the direction that we're going?
Yeah, if you look at demographics, back 1947, when India got independence from the UK, the average life expectancy in the UK was 64, and the average woman in the UK used to have 2.7 children. And in India, the life expectancy was 36, and the average woman used to have 5.6 children, because most of them used to die. That's why the life expectancy was so low. So fast forward, 50 years, the life expectancy in India was 65, and the average woman had 2.68 children. So we reached demographic parity with the UK from 1947, about 50 years later, after independence. So in that sense, we are all going through this progression of, of educating women, giving them their freedom to choose what they want to do, and automatically, the number of children per woman drops. Okay, so, and we reach parity, beyond which the population does not grow, and it even starts declining after a while.
Right. Let me put up a poll real quick. If you can just fill this out, if you're interested in enrolling in the course, just give me a yes. If you're not, just give us a no, make it easy for us to follow up with you. We'd appreciate you filling that out. Yeah, SNR from Florida says they're vegetarian and vegan for 6 days a week. Got to eat yogurt, I guess, 1 day a week. The meatless Monday concept, but taking it a little bit further. Kind of asking that general question, which institutions could one join other than HUA, that's the second part, or in the course, that they could start taking individual action? Are you waiting for a later discussion? What are the engineering solutions that are already there that we can start working on, as he says, or they say, as foot soldiers, as an individual level?
Yeah. Please join Climate Healers. And, Climate Healers, if you go on our website and sign up, you'll get on our newsletter, and you'll then be able to join our weekly meetings, and you can start contributing. There are lots of problems that need to be addressed, where, you have to do a lot of research to figure out what is the right solution, right, for what we're setting out to do. So I'll, the fact that we are vegan for 6 days a week and then the 7th day you eat something, it's everyone has their own journey. I'm saying that we are all on our journey to go vegan. Okay, we are all vegan at heart because no one really wants to hurt innocent animals unnecessarily. So we are all vegan at heart, and so we are all on our journey to go vegan, and each person has a unique journey. So I respect your journey, and if I can help you with anything on your journey to help you get there faster, I'd be happy to do that too. So, and I'm also looking at this as overcoming our human supremacism, which is sort of ingrained in us from the beginning. And uh, to me, my granddaughter was my teacher to help me overcome my human supremacism. Okay, because as a child, children come with this innocent eyes, and they're able to tell you that you're doing something that's human supremacist, especially when they're raised vegan.
Sometimes, right, the eyes of the child are just the clearest.
Absolutely.
Let me drop the link to the course in the chat again. We're kind of at the end of the Q&As. Oh, here's Rituji is asking, is it enough to do what you can at a personal level, be a vegan, compost, reduce, recycle, etc.? How important is it to be involved in a group which is doing this, in your opinion?
Oh, I think it's very important to be involved in a group. This is a group journey that we are on. It's not an individual. I mean, it's both individual and group. But when you go together as a group, you actually improve. You accelerate your own journey as well. Okay, and you help others accelerate their own journey. So in that sense, this is why I say there are 3 things we need to be doing right now. One is to go vegan as quickly as possible. Second is to become a conscious consumer. So consume as little as you can, be a minimalist. And third is to join a group and help, and work together and create this community together. It's only then can we come together and create these new institutions, new infrastructure, new constitution, and a new currency.
And one of the terms that we've been using at HUA is the ecosystem, right? The ecosystem of what do you do after you get a degree in Hindu studies? What is the ecosystem of opportunities and connections and networks? And I think that fits in exactly what you're saying. We're all on our individual journeys and our paths, but without an entire ecosystem moving forward, right, we're not going to have the impact we need to have to stop the 6th mass extinction that this planet is facing. Tejuji says they've already signed up for the course. We love to hear that. If you have more questions, please put them in the Q&A chat. Is the course going to be offered every quarter? No, it is not. And Sailesh, what are your thoughts? Because I know that you offered one class last quarter. This is a different course. Are you seeing it evolve? Are you going to repeat courses? How do you see the trajectory of what you're doing with HUA and these courses that you're offering?
I haven't thought through what I'm going to do after this quarter. So it's going to depend on what comes up, over the next quarter. But yeah, I see this as a progression, that there will be follow-on courses, or maybe I may repeat the Dharma course, because Dharma is very important for us to understand, and then maybe repeat the yoga course too. Because these two are based on the 2 books I wrote. The Dharma course is based on Carbon Dharma, and the yoga course is based on Carbon Yoga, the vegan metamorphosis. So that'll be the textbook for this course.
Could you elaborate on that? The 2 books you wrote, what was the journey? How did that happen? What was the response?
Right, sure. Oh, yeah. I started working on the environment in 2006, and within 3 years, I was quite depressed. I thought there was nothing I can do, and that I'm powerless, and I'm going to have to just sit there and watch everything go down the tubes. And then a year later, my granddaughter was born. And when I held her in my arms for the first time, she looked up at me and she smiled. And I was convinced instantly that things are going to change, that we are going to solve this problem. Okay. And so I immediately came back and started writing my first book, Carbon Dharma. Because Dharma is what is the right thing to do. And that's fairly easy to figure out. It didn't take me too long to figure out what is the right thing to do. So I wrote that book, and it just poured out of me, actually, Carbon Dharma. And then I spent the next 5 years researching how do we go about doing it? And what were we doing all along? What is the story we need to be telling? How do we convince people to transform? And so that took 5 years, and that I finished writing that in 2016, the Carbon Yoga, the Vegan Metamorphosis. But the main idea in that book, it took me a while to figure out that it was actually staring at me in the face all along. that we are the thermostat species of the planet. And because I had already acknowledged that human beings were changing the climate of the planet. So once you acknowledge that, it's obvious that you are the thermostat species of the planet.
I was going through the chat a little bit. Somebody brought up the issue of COVID. How has that affected and impacted and changed the dynamics? Has it exacerbated the problem? Has it given us new perceptions? What is more than a year into this pandemic?
Right. COVID has actually caused many people to step back and reflect on their own lives, because until then people were on autopilot, basically doing whatever they've been doing all along. And so this is Mother Nature essentially sending us to our room, saying, think about what you've done. Okay? And then come back. When you come back out, think about what you want to become. So it's like a bit of a thrashing and a timeout. And if you come back and do the exact same silly things we were doing before, there's going to be a bigger hit coming down the pike. Okay, because ultimately she's going to make us change. That's why I say the transformation is inevitable. It's going to happen. The only question is, how much suffering do you want to undergo before you transform?
We have a poll open. If you can find it, please let us know if you're interested in taking this course, the Yoga of Global Transformation. We'd appreciate you just giving a yes or a no. Interesting question by Srinivasji. It's asking the push to go vegan, yes, but what about the synthetic food, the Beyond Meat, the Impossible Burgers? Right. Are they actually good? Are they taking more energy? Are they sustainable? I'm having those questions also because I did used to eat meat, ate everything really. But now that I've made the transition, I'm wondering the same thing. Now that you've gotten rid of it, you lose the appetite for it, but then what is the synthetic stuff and what is that role? What are your thoughts on it?
Yeah, the role for those like Beyond Meat is to be a transition food for people to transition from eating meat to going vegan. So it's a transition food, and after you go vegan and you actually get to understand the spiritual side of why you need to go vegan, you don't want to be reminded that you used to eat meat. So you lose the appetite for that kind of food, and it happens naturally. And so then, you stop eating that, and you'll be eating more whole foods and more oil-free. And I mean, you'll get to a point where you become sattvic, right? Automatically become sattvic. Yeah.
Arun Jain asks about what's going on in India. Shouldn't India, with our Sanatana Dharma background and all this stuff, be the world leader in going vegan, vegetarian, non-veg? What are the statistics? What's going on in India?
Yeah. So India is being heavily marketed to by the global food giants because they see that their market is shrinking in the West. And so they are basically, persuading Indians to eat more meat and dairy. And that's why the market is growing there. But then also the diseases are growing much faster too in India. Within 20 years, diabetes has doubled. And so we are seeing the impact of eating that bad food almost immediately. Whereas here it took a while. So it's like slowly increasing the heat on the frog, right? It stays in there. Now the frog's temperature is being cranked up very quickly in India. So we're going to jump out of it, I think, very quickly. And so I see that India, from a cultural perspective, India has a vegan background. Fundamentally, it's the land of Ahimsa. The base food is vegan. It's dal sabji, and I mean roti sabji and dal chawal, right? That's our base food. So base food is fundamentally vegan. Whereas in the West, the base food is a slab of meat with a bunch of potatoes around you. So it's harder for the West to go vegan, really. And so I think that this is why India has the potential to turn on a dime and literally go vegan quickly. And especially, I think, if you look at smaller communities like, say, Nepal or Bhutan, you know, I'm seeing them becoming the first vegan country. Okay? And that would be a big feather in their cap if they do that.
Very interesting. I'd just like to announce that we are going to provide a $100 discount if you sign up. I don't know if it's on the website now. We had a little discount last week for the students of your course, but we're going to extend it because of the webinar. So that's going to be extended to you. Please enroll in this course. It's transformational, right? Global transformation is what we're talking about. And as Margaret Mead said, right, it's been a small group of dedicated people who's ever, it always starts the big changes with a small group of dedicated people. And Hindu University of America is creating that platform for people like Dr. Rao to bring more people in, to have these conversations, to present these ideas. Dr. Rao, where are you based? Hindu University of America is based obviously in the United States and Florida, but we're online, so everyone is welcome to participate through our online learning management system. We try to adjust for time zones, but Dr. Rao, where are you based out of?
I'm based out of Phoenix, Arizona, in the US. Actually, I do have a request. I think maybe, there are some students from Europe who wanted to join, and the timing is very inconvenient for them. So I was wondering if there is a way we can change it to 9 a.m.
Well, that's as the professor, as other people who enroll. I mean, if it's going to be on a Wednesday at 9 a.m., that would be difficult for
maybe Friday at 9 a.m. or something like that.
We can consider. It's up to you and the students who enroll. If you have a particular preference, if you're on this webinar and you think you can make it at a certain time but won't make it, currently we have it penciled in on Wednesdays at 9 p.m. Eastern. So yeah, that's pretty late for Europe.
Right.
So we'll figure that out moving forward. Please, we're happy to communicate. We're going back and forth. We want people to participate, and if it makes sense one way or the other, we'll make that shift. Thank you, Dr. Rao, for that. Voijuji asks, should we not drink milk even if it is obtained organically without hurting cows?
Yeah, I wrote a whole paper on the ethical vegetarian myth. And I can forward it to you, Ankurji, and you're welcome to share it with everyone. And basically the idea is, I was an ethical vegetarian. In fact, I thought I was not hurting the cow and I was not causing too much harm. And then I went to India and I basically had this epiphany where I realized that I was actually the worst contributor to environmental damage. Because literally it's what the cows eat, and that's causing, because when the cows finish eating, there's nothing for the deer to eat, so the deer dies. When the deer dies, the tiger dies. So fundamentally we are creating this ripple effect by raising cows. And the cows, currently our farmed animals are eating 5 times as much food as we eat, and their biomass is so large that it's a colossus. They're equivalent to like 11 times the biomass of all the wild megafauna that lived 10,000 years ago. So it's not sustainable at all. And so then when we start saying, let's do ethical version of it, you're going to balloon the biomass even more, which is not what we want to be doing. Yeah.
You didn't get into it this webinar, maybe you could just touch on it, but that whole biomagnification, the energy that it takes and the amount of waste through this process of filtering, not filtering, but like going from one level of the food chain to the next.
Yeah, what we have really done on the planet is over the last 10,000 years, we have cut down half the trees on the planet. So there are half the number of trees that used to be 10,000 years ago. And we have cut down the wild animals biomass by about 90% or more. And instead, we have created this animal colossus that's literally, as I said, 11 times the biomass of all the wild animals that lived, all the wild megafauna that lived. Megafauna is all animals greater than 25 kgs in weight. Yeah. So I have to look at, we look at our weight class and see in our weight class, what did we do? And we made a huge mess. And in the process, this is why the planet is dying in front of our eyes. And the sixth mass extinction is happening. And so it's us, it's about now coming back into alignment, reuniting, reconnecting back to nature, recognizing our true role. And it's like, imagine I was seeing an elephant in this sanctuary that's behind me. This is actually from Coorg. Okay. It's a green screen that I use this picture behind me. So in Coorg, I was observing an elephant breaking branches of trees. And I asked the owner, isn't that elephant destroying your trees? Don't you want to stop it? And she said, no. Wherever the elephant breaks branches of trees, that's where the sunlight streams to nourish the underbrush. So everything the elephant does is in resonance with the forest. So because the elephant knows when to stop. I mean, if she went around destroying every branch of every tree, she could destroy that forest very easily. Okay, but she doesn't. She stops because she knows that that's where something tells her that's you don't need to do any more of this. And we have reached the same point in our destruction of the planet. We are being told, it's time to stop. Think about becoming butterflies. Think about becoming a species that's compassionate to all other species, right? So that's the pause that COVID-19 gave us too. It's Mother Nature telling us, Bhudevi telling us to go to our rooms and think about what we have done. And so I see this as a process, just like the elephant stops. Who tells the elephant to stop? We don't know, but she stops. In the same way, we have been told to stop, and we are going to stop. And we are going to then regenerate the forests because we know how to plant 3 trillion trees. It's not a huge issue. Nature will do most of the planting for us anyway. We need to just start. And we can bring back the forest that we lost, and we can bring back the biodiversity that we killed off. And we can come back into alignment with nature. All we need to do is to go vegan and return all that land back to nature, the land that's currently being used to feed our animals. And this way, you're no longer claiming to be superior to animals because we are not. They all have their own unique gifts, and we have our own.
Yeah, the land that we've destroyed and the ocean. Again, I just saw Seaspiracy, and it's amazing how much destruction we've wrought on the ocean ecosystems. And obviously that's going to have a huge ripple effect, and it is already having. And then like the focus on the plastic straws compared to the fishing nets. I just thought that was amazing to see how so often we get focused in on a red herring or a tangent where the big issue is just ignored because of either moneyed interests or corruption or just bias or whatever it may be.
Yeah, it's the same, it's people who are running the Ponzi scheme. They have a motivation to continue the Ponzi scheme, right? That's what Bernie Madoff was doing too, until he got found out. And but we know that they're running a Ponzi scheme, and yet we are not doing anything about it in this case.
SNR from Florida is totally engaged. They're going to join your climate healers. They've got different places for you to speak at. Hopefully they'll connect with you. We're going to send an email to everyone. And if you have some specific links, some articles, some things that you want to share, we'll make sure that we get that out to everyone along with the the recording of this. Fabio asks or thinks that Ahimsa justification is tough for the West to buy. What are your thoughts about that? And Ahimsa is a fundamental concept or foundational, or is that something that we're trying to push on people that they're not going to accept, or how do we get?
No, I mean, look, it is the first part of the first limb of yoga is Ahimsa, right? It's how do you behave. The first limb is yamas, right? And it's how do you behave in the environment. And so it's as a species, how do you behave in the environment? Do you behave with himsa or ahimsa? I think that distinction is pretty clear. You cannot behave with himsa and expect it to be sustainable, right? Because we have so much power as a species that if we want to be cruel to other species deliberately, we'll kill them off, and which we have done. We are killing off up to 200 species every day right now. But each one of those species that we're killing off has its own unique gift, which we'll have to figure out how to replicate.
If that's even possible, right?
Once that's even possible. So that's why I say, it's when we don't know how to put it back together, the best thing to do is to not break it.
Simple enough, simple enough. All right, folks, please click that enrollment. Yes, if you're interested, no, if you're not. This has been a great webinar. Appreciate all the engagement, the questions. Saileshi, closing thoughts?
Well, thank you for this wonderful opportunity and this platform that you've been giving me. I thoroughly enjoyed my Dharma course. I thoroughly enjoyed the interaction with the students. I think they're an awesome group of people to work with. And I'm looking forward to this, the yoga course as well.
Okay, great. All right. Thank you all for participating. Namaste. We'll see you hopefully in course or at the next webinar. Thank you, Dr. Rao.
Thank you.
Dhanyawad.